Okay, go ahead.
Testing, testing, 1, 2. This is about the volume I'll probably be talking.
Yep.
It's good?
That's good.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
whenever you're ready, present.
Okay. Well, we'll start at 2. Yeah. All's well. Okay. Hi there, everyone. My name is Derek Ides. I'm here as a representative of Manitoba Educators for Social Justice. Oh, there's some more of you. Come on in. There's a seat back in that corner there. And this one is taken, I think. But great. So again, Derek Ides. I teach at the University of Winnipeg Collegiate, and I teach in a program called the Model School. I have taught my first 2 years of teaching were with Frontier School Division, taught up in Norway House, straight out of university, and had really fantastic experiences there that have actually led me down the path that we're going to talk about significantly today. Yeah, so we're just a little bit about my program. You may have heard a little bit about the Met School this morning with Nancy, if you were part of that stream or that session. But the Model School is a program that serves students who are underrepresented in post-secondary education. So our population is about 90% Indigenous and about 10% newcomer. And they could be refugees or new immigrants. And so just to give you a little bit of context as we talk about and give anecdotes and examples from our attempts at educating our students for social justice. So that's my spiel, and pass it over to Nancy here for a bit.
All right. Oh, no. Sorry. 1 second. Good afternoon. All right. Hi. I'm Nancy Janelle. I'm the acting principal of the Met School. It took me a really long time to figure out what I wanted to do with my life. I only got into education about 7 years ago, and this was a result of basically traveling around the world for 10 years before that. And as I was traveling in Central America, Southeast Asia, Australia, all over the place, what I often was doing to kind of fund my travels was teaching English as a second language as I made my way around the globe. And it was through this teaching and through seeing all of these different countries and a lot of the issues of social justice, inequality, sustainability, democracy as I traveled around the world that I realized I actually wanted to be a teacher. And that I wanted to get into it so that I could try to inspire the next generation to really care about what was happening, not only in our communities, but in our world. So I started teaching at the Met School, which you may have heard about earlier, and I'll talk a little bit about how we connect social justice to some of our projects and internships at the Met School. But it really still wasn't quite enough. I started a social justice group at my school, obviously, and what I found was I was feeling really isolated within the larger community. I was housed inside of Garden City Collegiate, and it turned out I wasn't the only social justice educator out there in Winnipeg, in Manitoba, that was feeling isolated. And that's kind of how this group formed, and this is what we're going to talk to you about today. So a little bit about our history. Do you want, oh, there we go. Okay.
Yeah, little Brock.
Yeah, you know Brock? Yeah. One of the presentations earlier this morning talked about the Department of Education's mission statement. And that included democracy, a socially just society, and a sustainable society. And that's really the key tenets of who we are as a group of social justice educators. But what we found was that in a lot of the things that were happening within the classrooms, it was really just touching on kind of Band-Aid solutions. Really wasn't getting at the heart of the matter, and it really wasn't coming up with anything that was affecting meaningful change. And what we found were there were teachers all across the province who were feeling the same way. So this actually, probably about 5 years ago? 5 years ago, there were 3, so this was before Derek and I got involved. Kelly, Brock, and Patrick, okay? So they were the ones who initially came up with this idea. They were teaching in different divisions across the city and really realized that there were other teachers out there who were feeling isolated. So they started planning this idea of Mesj, Manitoba Educators for Social Justice. How can we connect people across the province who are feeling like this in their schools? And so we they decided to form this, and then they started, roping some of us other social justice educators into it, and that's where Derek and I joined, and our group started growing. So now we are a group of educators across Winnipeg. We're the Manitoba Educators for Social Justice, but we're really kind of the Winnipeg Educators for Social Justice, but Mesj didn't have a nice as ring as Mesj. And so we are trying to do outreach, and we'll talk about a number of the different things that we're doing. But we are trying to engage educators from K to 12 and across all subject areas. We don't feel like social justice is just something to be taught in the social studies classroom. All right.
But it is a good fit.
Yes, but just not only in the social justice classroom. Here, let's use this. The slide isn't matching. Yeah, I'm trying that.
Okay, we'll figure it out.
Yeah.
It's a.
It says resume slideshow.
Yeah, it's showing up
Yeah.
on there. but it's not showing up
Yeah,
on
for
there.
that one, it's
Yeah, I don't know.
that I can see it's not.
We'll get it. I'll continue to talk a little bit.
There you go.
Oh,
You have this in
perfect.
front of you anyway. This is our little handbill.
Yes. One more to you, I think, so we can come. I'm going to go over our question of who we are as Manitoba Educators for Social Justice. The slide here doesn't come up super clear. Those of you that are here in the room with us, you have a copy in front of you. We call it our manifesto, and so a whole bunch of stereotypes might jump at you based on the term manifesto in terms of vision statement or purpose or whatever. Some of those stereotypes are probably right, but I'll just let that one hang. And you'll probably hear a little bit more as we go through the manifesto, whether those stereotypes are solidified or challenged on your front. Okay, the first thing I wanted to talk about was our point number one. We teach to empower. Now we know that education is powerful. As teachers, that's part of why we do it. Okay, it's a powerful, move over here. Education is a powerful thing. And so we can either use our teaching and use our way of engaging in the education system as a way of entrenching the status quo of how power is. We are the powerful teachers, we are the powerful administrators, okay, and we exercise that power over our students. Or we can empower our students. So what I'm going to do for each of our kind of key points here on our manifesto is I'm going to talk about it for a second, and then I'm going to give you just an example, very short one, of how I approach this item in my classroom. All right. So we teach to empower. The practical way that I do that is we do a lot of participatory work. Okay, with media, with video, students telling their stories. There's a lot of option. I know a lot of teachers do that, where students are able to set the stage for their own work. It's a little bit nerve-wracking as a teacher sometimes, letting go of the strings, letting go of the power. Sometimes you might get, some foul language in a video, or sometimes you might get students engaging a topic that challenges your idea of what's comfortable. But as soon as you grab those strings, as soon as you grab control of the projects again, your students feel that you're playing that power play, and they disengage or they lack their motivation. And so teaching to empower is a huge piece. That's why we've named it number one on our list, because we want students to feel control. We want them to feel in charge of their learning process. Point number two is we are committed to our own growth as educators. We feel like to grow as a teacher. Sorry, I'll bring my notes over a little bit this way so that I can stay in view. Okay, collaboration and teamwork essentially is the best type of PD. that we can engage in. And it's ironic that I'm standing up here and speaking to you in a traditional PD environment that's not necessarily collaborative, but we're going to go with it. Collaboration, teamwork, best type of PD, and that's something that Mesj does really well. We do that through a couple of different events. We have on the Sage Day, okay, we have our own Sage event called WISE, Workshops in Sustainability and Education. And that event is a very collaborative event, and we'll talk a little bit more about that later. We also do salons, which are, unlike the previous presentation in this exact room, where salons meant haircutting, okay? We do salons where we talk about hot topics while they're still hot as teachers. So we do spontaneous gatherings in our living rooms or coffee shops around the city to talk about hot topics. We'll also talk a little bit more about that as we go through what we do. All right, so these are some of the ways that we're committed to our growth as educators. Number 3, we're radical. All right, at the core of what radical means, it's about getting to the root of things. Now, I heard in another presentation just that we were talking, the U of M presentation about refugees and teaching to refugees. Often it's important to get to the root of things on the micro level with students and on the macro level with issues. And so that's one of the key things that we focus on as educators, is we want to get to the root of what is going on in whether it's a global issue, okay, whether it's a local issue. We're trying to get to the root of those issues. Some of the ways that I approach that in my classes, both English language arts and social studies, is we focus a lot on the issue of colonialism. So a lot of the novels and the texts that we pick look at historical colonialism, current colonial attitudes, and so we approach the issue of root causes by going far back and underneath the surface of the issues that we're currently dealing with. Number 4, we reject all forms of oppression. So this is another one that stands out really strongly for us as Manitoba Educators for Social Justice. We look at things like racism, patriarchy, homophobia. They divide our schools, they divide us, and we feel like they divide us at the benefit of people who have power and wealth. And so especially when these types of things, racism, patriarchy, and homophobia, when they rear their ugly heads in our schools, that is something that we feel is essential for trying to deal with. And so Nancy mentioned earlier, we're hosting a session about engaging with Syrian refugees as they come to our schools. And these issues are real issues. The issues of dividing our student body are issues, and we need to be able to be aware of how to approach those things as teachers and how to have a united student body. And so rejecting all forms of oppression are essential. The way that I approach this topic in my classrooms is as a professional development focus. I'm looking at anti-oppressive teaching methods. I also acknowledge straight up, right in the front of all my classes, I acknowledge my privilege as a white male teaching. Especially over these last couple of weeks, I've been teaching about colonialism and Indigenous issues. It's an awkward thing, but I dive into that awkwardness because that's where I am, and I state my power and privilege in that context, and that is a core element of anti-oppressive methods as a teacher. Number 5, so we might get some hackles up, we're anti-capitalist. All right? This is something that seems kind of negative with the anti attached to it, but what we're really for is we're for equality, generosity, and fairness. And we feel like that sometimes is incompatible with our current economic system. And the way that impacts educators' classrooms, okay, is we try and, in my classrooms, we try and look at novels, we try and look at current issues that challenge the status quo. The status quo gets enough voice in our students' ears and eyes through the media, through their desire to consume and their desire to have and collect and own, and it's something that we like to challenge as educators, and we feel that it's very important. And the final one is, we, as Manitoba Educators for Social Justice, oppose militarism and imperialist wars. In our classes, we challenge the predominant notion, the humanitarian notion of our Canadian foreign policy, and we talk about how the issues are far more complex, often bringing up colonialism. So last year, with the Charlie Hebdo shootings, we tried to dive deeper into a response, looking at the colonial history of the relationship between France and Algeria, and trying to understand where a lot of these things are coming from. So all these things are connected, and we feel like these define who we are as educators with the Manitoba Educators for Social Justice, and we feel like the striving for social justice for us needs to encompass these 6 standards. All right?
All right. So what do we do? So this is what you hear what we stand for, but how are we now taking this and moving forward? And we're doing this in a variety of different ways. So one of the biggest things that we do once a year is we host WISE, which is our alternative to SAGE. So this is for educators who want to go out on SAGE Day, but they don't want to specifically go to a subject area professional development, but they want to go to a social justice development day. So we host a day. We've had 2 now. It's grown exponentially in just 1 year. It's been really quite incredible, the feedback that we've gotten. We host it in that ed camp style. So the beginning is looking like this, people talking, experts speaking on their field of interest, and then we break into groups afterwards and have people lead organic discussions about what they want to learn about. So we've had 2 WISE days, which have, proven to be very successful. The second thing that we've been doing is having salons. So think Gertrude Stein, Paris, 1920s, right? A group of people coming together in somebody's living room to talk about the issue of the day. So these things happen very quickly because they have to be very topical. It's usually all generated through our Facebook group. We'll quickly decide, we should meet about this. Surely there are educators in the city right now that want to get together and talk about how to talk about this in their classroom tomorrow. So we'll quickly make a Facebook event. We'll invite people. It'll be in one of our homes, and then we just talk. So this is an example of one that we had, was about the Winnipeg being the most racist city. We had one about right after the attacks happened in Paris. We've also had some that were less topical, but also we felt were top of mind, like with Naomi Klein, This Changes Everything. It was kind of like a reading circle salon.
Museum for Human Rights.
Right, and we had one at the Museum for Human Rights. And that was kind of looking at it from a critical lens, like what is not being said inside of the Canadian Museum for Human Rights, and then that was followed by a salon in a local cafe. So we try to bring together educators who are wanting to talk about issues that might be difficult to talk about in their classrooms, and they want to kind of pick the brains of other educators to figure out, how are you going to talk about this tomorrow? Because I'm having a hard time trying to figure out how to talk about this attack in Paris with my grade 5 class, right? Or how to talk about this in my classroom because I actually have a lot of Muslims in my classroom, and now that the tide is turning, how do we address this? So it's been a really great networking thing that we've come up with recently. And then outreach. We're trying to really get out there and support other groups in the city that kind of align with our manifesto. So other groups who are out there doing stuff that we feel is really important, and we believe in them and what they're doing. So, for example, here we went out to the Gay Pride Parade to support that group. We've gone out to support the Missing and Murdered Women's March that takes place on Valentine's Day. The Shoal Lake with the hydro, we've gone out to support that as well. So we try to do as much outreach as we can, and that part we're still growing on. We're still trying to get better at. Yeah. Is this me still?
Yeah.
Okay, I couldn't remember. All right. So we have a blog, and all of this information is on the front of here, like so how to access those different.
Liked you and followed you.
Thank you. So on our blog, the main thing that we do on our blog is we have resources, and this area is still something that we're trying to grow on. So what we want to do is we want to connect educators who are creating amazing lesson plans, like that are tied around social justice issues, around cross-curricular areas and different grade levels as well. And so we've been creating a list of resources and lesson plans that other educators can access. Also on our blog, we put different articles that we've written that we feel would just be interesting to share, again, topical issues, or sometimes just links to things that we found that we think other people might be interested in. The blog is not as active as our Facebook page. I think right now our Facebook page is our most active form of social media. There are quite a few of us who post onto our Facebook page, and that can be on a variety of issues. As you can imagine, Manitoba Educators for Social Justice is interested in a variety of things. So we share a lot of events that are going on around the city, and then different links. Sometimes we'll put, like when the attacks in Paris happened and we were planning the salon very quickly, all of the posts that were going up on our Facebook page were articles and links that a teacher might be able to use in the classroom to help them kind of deconstruct what was happening and help them in the classroom with their students. Also on the Facebook page is where we share a lot of our events, the different things that we have planned and different things that are going on.
I can talk just a little bit more about the resources section of our blog. The resource section has lessons in English, social studies, science, and at this point we're still looking for our very first math lesson plan. So anybody out there wants to submit a social justice themed math lesson plan, that would be fantastic. But it is weighted a little heavy on the social studies and the English side, but some of the things that we've had, some of the unit plans, lesson plans that we have on our site are things like myth-busting the genetics of racism. All right, that's a science lesson. We've got Canadian mining studies that Nancy might talk a little bit more about later. We've got an issue or a full kind of long-term unit on colonization that looks at Indigenous people and particularly looks at case studies of resource development. In particular, Manitoba Hydro is the case study. I'm going to be talking about more of that in about 5 minutes. We also have unit plans on film studies and those sorts of things. And so anybody's willing or anybody's able to submit lesson plans and unit plans, and that's something that we pitch at our Y sessions and our PD sessions all the time, is anytime you have something that you're using in your class, put it on here. Comment on the other ones, adapt them, and we're going to all be better as teachers for that type of collaboration and teamwork. And so it's a pretty crucial piece for our professional development as teachers. All right?
If you just want to leave that up for
Okay.
just 1 second, because I'll just use this screenshot you did. So as an example, some of you may have already heard about this from the last session. The next thing that we're doing, like in addition to the WISE Day and the salons, we're also hoping to host PD days. And we're doing our very first PD day outside of WISE or SAGE on February 20th at the U of W. And so it is almost like the salon in that it's reactive to a current situation. So right now with the influx of Syrian refugees, we put a call out to see if there was an interest in us hosting an event like this. The feedback was overwhelming, so we're going ahead right now. We're in the process of planning it. We've got the date, we've got the location, we're just finalizing our speakers, and the event will now be on our Facebook page, hopefully by Monday or so. So that's just another example. And doing things like this, like just telling people that we exist, so people know that we're there if they want to get involved and collaborate with us in any way. It can be just by sharing articles on our Facebook page or sharing lesson plans or coming out with us when we're going on a march. So there's all sorts of different levels of involvement that we're open to. So for example, if someone is a graphic designer and they want to help us out, from their area of interest, we're always looking for people to help out in any kind of way. Okay, so how we're going to end the session is by talking about 2 examples in each of our schools where we felt we've been really successful in integrating social justice into the classroom and connecting to different curricular areas in doing so. This is an example from my school at the Met School. So it's a little bit different because the students do have a lot more time to work on projects than they do in a regular classroom setting. But this was a collaborative project from different grade levels throughout the school, through the Social Justice Club, but also through their independent projects that they were working on. So they were able to pull together this really amazing campaign for this year. Now, one of the ways that we try to look at things when planning a social justice campaign, and this is part of, going back to some of these pieces, going and looking at that radical piece and looking at the root cause. Whenever I have a group or a student who's trying to plan something around social justice, I want them to dig deeper. I don't want them to just try to come up with money. I don't want them to just throw money at a problem because that doesn't solve anything. It's just a Band-Aid. You have a broken leg, you're not going to put a Band-Aid on it. So my students and I had come up with this ABC. This was something that the kids had come up with, and I've really jumped on it because I thought it was a really good acronym to use for it. And that was, if you're planning a campaign, to look at 3 things. A, you want to raise awareness. B, you want to raise bucks. And that's usually where social justice stuff ends. But this is the piece for me, and what I've been trying to instill in the kids that's super important is the change piece. The awareness and the bucks don't matter if you're not getting at the root cause and you're not trying to affect meaningful change. So this is an example of a campaign that I felt was very successful because it addressed the A, B's, and the C's. So it all started at the very beginning of the year where we held a human rights conference at our school. And the topic was all about Canadian mining companies, and we used the Congo as a specific example because Canadian mining practices in the Congo are particularly atrocious. And the students had learned about that from a different human rights conference that they had been to, and then they wanted to share it with their school. And I think you brought kids to that conference. So we had this big day. We invited students from all over Winnipeg to come to the conference. We had speakers who were able to speak on Canadian mining practices. So we had people from the Congo speaking, we had mining people speaking, we had someone come and was speaking about coltan and telephones and how the minerals from the Congo are being used in our phones. But more specifically, we focused on a couple of bills that needed to be changed, a couple of laws in Canadian law that needed to be changed. And that wouldn't allow Canadian mining companies to operate the way they are overseas. So a big part of what was happening at the conference was not just raising awareness, but we had a petition and a letter writing campaign that was happening that we were collecting so we can send it off to Ottawa. So at all of these events, we were signing letters and signing petitions. So we had the conference, which was this just amazing day. We had so many students there. We had tons of letters, tons of petitions signed, and students walked away feeling really empowered. That was followed by a rally. So this was on Earth Day. We held a rally down at the legislature, again, that was tying into that awareness piece, trying to get media attention on what we were doing. We actually made the front page news of the Winnipeg Free Press, which was a huge deal for us. We had a ton of people come from a variety of different schools. Lots of kids came out from Gordon Bell because they were just down the street, so it was good to have their support. We had drummers out there. Again, we were signing letters, signing petitions the whole time. Every event that we had, we were doing that. So we were really lucky that was a really successful day. And then this is where the school-based projects at the Met School were able to really strengthen our social justice campaign, which largely tied into the global issues curriculum that they were working on because they were in grade 12. So one of the students, her senior thesis project for the year, which tied into our campaign, was to have a benefit concert. So her curriculum was all tied into different business planning and entrepreneurship and the global issues credit and the English credit. And she planned this gigantic benefit concert at the West End Cultural Center. We had this amazing turnout. We were able to sign more letters and sign more petitions at the concert. And then all the money we raised from the concert went to Doctors Without Borders. In addition to that, I forgot to put one picture on here. One of our other students was working on a documentary film. So as all of this was going on, she was making her film about, it was called No More Blood in Our Phones. And so she was interviewing people from all across Canada via Skype. She was recording all of our different events. And so she had created at the end this documentary film that got played in a variety of international film festivals. We had a screening at the Park Theatre. All the money that we raised from that event, we were able to donate to a local Congolese family, which was terribly sad. The husband had just died in a car accident, and the mother was left with 4 kids. And so instead of sending that to Doctors Without Borders, we donated that money to this particular local family. And in the end, we were able to send all of these letters and all of these petitions to Ottawa. And at the beginning of this campaign, okay, so we're trying to get to the root cause of things, right? And I told them at the beginning, look, we're not actually going to be able to stop mining companies from mining in the Congo and across the world. But let's figure out how we could do this. If, what is the process we need to go through to make something like this happen? Can we inspire other people to get involved and take on the cause as well? But we had our petitions read in Parliament and that were recorded, and then they sent the videos to us to show us the petitions being read, and they were cheering and they were clapping, and then they were so happy, and they knew they weren't going to change legislation, right? But now they understand how the process works and how change can happen. So maybe down the road, when enough momentum starts developing on a particular issue where change is going to be possible, they know the process. They know how it's going to have to happen. They understand that the bills have to be changed. So for us, it was a huge win. It was a super successful campaign. Yes, Canadian mining companies are still awful and doing awful things around the world, but they raised a lot of awareness. We were able to help out some people, and we had a voice in Parliament, and that was huge.
All right. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the case study that I do with my students. I have a bit of a luxury, just like Nancy has a luxury where she has the ability to do these massive projects and these students do these things. I have a luxury where I have the same students in both my English and social studies classes. And so I can do a lot of interdisciplinary work. And sometimes my students come to class and they can't tell whether it's a social studies or an English class by what we're talking about during that day. And so it's a nice luxury for me. One of the issues that we look at significantly throughout our year, last year we focused on water issues. So we started by attending the Canadian Museum for Human Rights openings, but we didn't go to the museum. We went across the hill, or across the Scotiabank stage, and met with the chief and elders from Shoal Lake 41st Nation. And we met with them and we talked about water issues for them and why they were there protesting. And the students grabbed hold of that and they wanted to focus on water for the year. And so we developed a significant kind of focus throughout the year on water issues. So we looked at Lake Winnipeg, and then we really focused on Manitoba Hydro. Some of the things that we did were we found a photo essay by a local photographer named Matthew Sawatsky, and he had produced, along with an elder from Grand Rapids First Nations, a photo essay about the impacts of hydro on people in northern Manitoba. And the photo essay was called A Sad Sort of Clean. And it was a play on the fact that hydro, they present hydro as a clean and sustainable energy source, but if, and maybe some people out there who are watching from Frontier and from northern Manitoba, they might be able to validate this, that when people say that hydro is clean, a lot of people up north have a chuckle or a laugh or a cry about the fact that we consider our energy source as clean, because it has created a lot of damage on the other end of the hydro line. So we do gallery walk, we look at questions. We actually this year had the luck to be able to, and Nancy brought some of her students as well, to be able to see this photo exhibit actually in a gallery. So we went to the Mennonite Heritage Gallery at CMU and were able to see all these photographs in their 4x3 glory, along with a whole bunch of drawings of Northern elders. And we heard Elder Ellen Cook speak about her experience in Grand Rapids, growing up and constantly hearing the rumble of the rapids, and now hearing the hum of electricity as the rapids were diverted through a dam, and you can no longer hear the namesake of the community. And so she gives a very, very powerful presentation about growing up on the land, on the water, and how hydro has devastated that environment. So we do a gallery walk. We talk about those issues. There's a short documentary that they produced as well called The Other End of the Line, and it involves interviews with the people who were part of the photo exhibit. And it's all something that is underneath the surface in our province. Our province relies very heavily on Manitoba Hydro. Talk to my local MLA, and he would validate the fact that there's a power hierarchy in Manitoba, and the provincial government is not at the top. And so these are issues that are core to our future, not only as taxpayers, but also as concerned environmental citizens, and people who are concerned about the sustainability of our province, and people who are now really getting on board with issues of reconciliation. This issue covers all of these key, timely, important topics. And when the people at the south end of these transmission lines are gaining all of the benefits, and the people at the north end are taking all the risks and facing all of the damage, that's an issue of injustice that is clear and present in our society today, right here in Manitoba. And so there's an element of looking far when you're teaching social justice, and there's an element of looking near. And you don't get much nearer than flipping the switch in your classroom. Just like with Shoal Lake, you don't get as near as turning your faucet or drinking a cup of water. Those things are very tangible for our students, and they really hit home. Another thing we did with our hydro case study was we did a Clean Environment Commission role play, where students took different responsibilities in the Clean Environment Commission. So every time a big new dam has to be built in Manitoba, they have to go through Clean Environment Commission. And a lot of times they're seen as kangaroo courts, and we talk about that. As we approach it, we're like, this is a process that our government does, but it's not necessarily going to impact. We visited the Clean Environment Commission hearing and heard elders from the north saying, I understand that this dam is going to be built, no matter what we say here today, but I want to go on record so that my kids and my grandkids know that there were people opposed to this, this stuff that was devastating our land. And so a lot of people presented, and they could feel the tension, they could feel the hopelessness of those situations, and it's something that's not very well engaged in our province. So we do a Clean Environment Commission role play where people take on the role of trappers. Last year, our trapper from our Clean Environment Commission was the granddaughter of a trapper from Barons River, all right? And so they were able to take on the roles that were connected to them and see how this process goes. And finally, we end with a little bit of an energy reduction craft. We take hydro-based images and we Mod Podge or decoupage them onto light switches. So the students can take those home, put them on their light switches with their parents' help. And we put slogans on there like, remember the North, or we're all connected. Just so that people know that when they're actually turning that light on or off, that there's an actual physical connection all the way to a dam that has flooded trap lines, and that has caused significant problems up in northern communities. And so that's one of the ways that I like to dive into social justice with my class. And we tied that in with a poetry unit in my English class, where we went on some writing retreats to Lake Winnipeg, up on the watershed that flows down into Lake Winnipeg in the Pembina Valley, and we created a little book, a poetry book, that we used. We launched it in the faculty club at the university, and it's a product that students have that they can remember. And one of the great things, this is tied into the Shoal Lake piece, was that one of the students came up with the idea, because they had just been talking in science about our body composition. And so they came up with the idea that they were between 60 and 65% Shoal Lake. Physically, that was who they were. because that was the water that they consumed. And so there was a great poem that came out of that concept. And so just that engagement has been really exciting. We do different themes every year, so I'm not sure exactly where we're going this year. The previous year we focused on urban-rural issues, connecting, focused specifically on food and making sure that we are aware and treat the people that produce our food well. Those are a bunch of the different ways that we approach social justice in our classroom. So we got 5 minutes. I'm just going to pull up the slide with our contact info, but a lot of you have that. And open it up for questions and answers.
I just wanted to add one thing to the last slide, just to kind of to explain how this networking thing and this collaboration really works and how it's able to kind of snowball. So I took my students to this gallery walk that Derek had organized, and then we come back to my school and they're so inspired. Like, they can't believe this is happening. They've never heard about this happening. Our school needs to know this is happening. So now my social justice club this year has taken off on this tangent. Now we have Ellen Cook coming into our school. We're going to be playing the documentary to all of the students in our school, and we're hosting a big letter writing campaign to Manitoba Hydro because we went to visit his social justice focus. Like, it's all so interwoven, and we just want to work together and support each other and collaborate. And there's no point in recreating the wheel every single time when there's so many amazing educators out there who are doing incredible things with their students. So, all right, we would love to open it up for questions.
Are you related to
Yeah, there is a group I came across online. I think it's in the US. It's called Educators for Social Justice. So is it like a global? No, you're not like a. No, okay. It's a made in Manitoba product.
Yeah.
Good.
I think they follow our Facebook page, though.
Okay.
Yeah. Yes. Why don't I just do
I'm
this?
one-
and then
thank
it's
you.
easier.
Hi, I'm just wondering if you have any plans with your technology capabilities of accessing educators outside the perimeter.
Yeah, sure, I can answer that. We have likes and follows from places that are outside the perimeter. This year we had people that came to our Sage Day PD from outside the perimeter, from people that are in the broader sphere, some people from up north. I think there might have even been some Frontier School Division teachers at our PD on that day. A lot of the spontaneous stuff happens quickly, and it's difficult for people to connect that way, but we are trying our best to be as connected online as possible. And so all the resources that we have and the connections and the Facebook life that events kind of develop in terms of resources, those are all online and available for everyone. It's just, and the one other thing that we've done is we haven't done a lot of it, but we have something called Mesj Speaks, where a number of our core members are available to go to schools to present on topics. So I know Nancy and another one of our members are going to Brandon to do some PD at Brandon University. I'm going to do a session on hydro specifically for the Education Students Association at U of W, and also engaging, like being able to take time off to go to other schools and present on these issues that we're familiar with. Yeah, but it's something that's on our radar for sure.
And there's got to be a way we can do it,
Yeah.
because it is a lonely landscape for social justice educators outside the perimeter. We are alone, it's lonely, and there's got to be a way technologically that we can connect, even in somebody's living room through Skype or something like that.
Yeah, it's a great idea. We've got 1 minute here. Any other questions? Okay, well, thanks so much for your attention and for your presence here.
Thank you.
Yeah.
You've already received this, but it's my pleasure to re-give this to you. Bring this to you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Derek Hyde's also known as Nico's dad.
Okay.
And I'll be telling Ruth that I got to see her, because Nico's an older kid in her classroom. And so he's a hero. And he's also a very fine young man. So. I saw Nico's dad today.
Cool. Thank you so much. We're
Thank
around
you.
for a little bit for
Thank-
conversation if you
Thank
want.
you. It's awesome.